Hey everyone, I was out sick last week. Sorry, I caught a cold and I lost my voice, so I couldn't make a video. But I just wanted to take a quick second to say how touched I was from reading all the get well messages from all of you out there. So thank you all from the bottom of my heart. It really means a lot to me. Also, I wanted to give everyone a heads up that business is starting to come back for Peoria Charter, which is a good thing. However, there is a huge shortage of people who want to work out there. We are so short for drivers right now, and because of that, I'm going to be out of the office and behind the wheel of a Motorcoach a lot starting this fall, which means I may not be able to keep up with my weekly releases starting this fall. However, I promise I will keep the content coming. It just may be every other week or so instead of every week when the busy days hit. But there is a good side to all of this. I will have lots of new bus trip vlogs to make for my other channel since I'll be on the road a lot more. And if you didn't know, I have another YouTube channel where I vlog all of my bus adventures and try to show all the local food scenes of where my trips take me. So keep an eye out for more content over there. With that said, let's get on with today's video, the business end of a coach bus and what happens when people do their business on a motor coach. Hey, what is going on, all you bus nuts, geeks, and enthusiasts out there? Welcome to another episode of Motorcoach World. My name is James. Ask any school kid who has ever been on a charter bus for a field trip and what the difference is between a coach bus and a school bus, and the kid will most likely say that the coach bus has a restroom on board. Among many other amenities offered on board a motor coach compared to its industry counterparts like the school bus and the city transit bus, the restroom is probably one of the most sought after features when someone makes a decision to shell out more cash to charter a motor coach rather than to hire a school bus for their group outing. Now, I actually did a video on the differences between a motor coach and other types of buses a while ago. Feel free to check it out. I'll put the link down below and it should be popping up here somewhere. But if you think about it, it's amazing how much more desirable and luxurious a over-the-road vehicle becomes when it has a place for the passengers to, well, do their business in. I mean, let's face it, public restrooms in rest areas and truck stops can be frightening places sometimes. Also, the idea of having to pull off the highway every time someone needs to do nature's bidding can cause delays, especially when you have 55 people on board. Today, we're going to talk about doing business on a motor coach and what happens to it all when you're finished.
A good waste extraction system is important. Imagine where we'd be without one.
Now, I just got to say, the inner 10-year-old in me had a field day making this one. Contrary to what some believe, what goes in the lavatory of a motor coach stays in the lavatory of a motor coach. It doesn't just fall out onto the road. Well, at least unless you release it on purpose. Dave Matthews Band. Yeah, that's right. I went there. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, well, let me enlighten you. On August the 8th, 2004, a driver for Dave Matthews Band's entertainment coach pulled alongside the Kedzie Street Bridge in downtown Chicago, sitting over the Chicago River, decided to dump the contents of the restroom of his motor coach. Now, the bridge had a graded surface allowing liquids to pass right through, so there wouldn't be any evidence of this unprofessional move towards a sad excuse of a coach operator. Well, anyway, an unlucky group of tourists just so happens to have been passing under the bridge at that time. Yes, that's right. The passengers on the riverboat Chicago's Little Lady got a nice dousing of human waste from Dave Matthews Band's coach bus. And the driver did eventually get caught, facing numerous consequences and public service as well as fines. I figured you guys would get a kick out of that little sidetrack story. Anyway, back to business. On the throne of a motor coach, unlike a toilet at home, stuff doesn't just magically disappear into the abyss to be forgotten about. Most motor coaches in the US utilize a dual tank system for their restrooms. Right below the mobile throne is the holding tank that is usually filled with some water combined with a blue formaldehyde tablet to create the blue liquid that one usually sees in a porta potty. You know, the strong bubblegum smelling stuff that turns everything blue. The blue liquid is basically a really powerful deodorizer with strong disinfectant properties. It's there to help combat the smells as well as to break down the waste that goes in. However, it does have its limitations on how much odor it can handle. Leaving a coach bus with a well-used restroom parked in 100 plus degrees weather, that's 38 degrees Celsius for those of you across the pond. Well, after 5 to 8 hours under that hot sun while you and your group are off enjoying the venue, well, let's just say whatever is in that holding tank is going to start to stew. You as the driver of your coach as well as your group will be returning to a funky smelling coach bus. Now, to avoid a long smelly ride home, well, that's where the second tank comes in. The second tank is a holding tank that is located just below the actual primary toilet tank. The second tank allows the driver to empty the contents of the main toilet tank down into the secondary holding tank, where the driver can then refill the main lavatory tank with fresh water and drop another blue tablet into it. Everything that's been dropped down into the holding tank is then sealed, thereby alleviating the smell and giving the group a fresh coach to come back to, as well as a fresh toilet to use. However, it's important for a coach operator to understand that at this point, the driver has used their backup. Should the main tank become overloaded yet again from all the high schoolers relieving themselves on the way home after a day of consuming copious amounts of theme park food, well, you would then have a bit of a problem. At this point, a driver would either have to find a designated RV dumping station or simply endure the rest of the trip home. But once the coach is back in the care of its facility and staff, a wash crew will usually dump the entire contents of both tanks, then rinse both tanks out and then fill them with water along with blue chemical tablets, making this mobile throne ready to use once again.
You know something, Moniz? You're due for a transfer. How does waste extraction sound?
Now, depending on the coach bus company you charter your bus from, they all have different rules when it comes to using the facilities on board. Some companies will simply not allow passengers to do number 2 on the facilities on board at all, restricting passengers to only doing number 1 while on board. Some coach bus companies will simply ask their passengers to request restroom stops if they should need to use the facilities and limit the onboard lavatories for emergency uses only. And some companies simply just don't care. I mean, you as the passengers paid for the coach and all its facilities on board, so enjoy. However, the passengers in these cases are usually warned of the consequences of overusing the onboard toilet. When driving a trip, I always like to tell my passengers prior to departure what goes on a motor coach stays on the motor coach, which includes what you put in the restroom. So I usually recommend emergency deuces only, please. Now, over the years of driving motor coaches, I will say that not all coach bus lavatories are created equal. In fact, there are certain coach models I prefer to drive on trips simply because, well, I like the onboard restrooms better. Most motor coach models used in the US have their restrooms located at the very rear of the bus on the passenger side. More commonly seen in Europe, although they do also exist here in the US, are coach buses with restrooms mounted amidship below the main passenger deck. This type of restroom configuration usually occurs if the coach is equipped with a second service door. The entrance to these midship coach restrooms are usually located at the bottom of the steps on the second service door. However, in the US, this type of configuration is not very common, and again, most motor coaches here have rear-mounted lavatories on the main passenger deck. Now, personally, I have never been on or have driven a coach with a midship restroom. However, I love that it's below decks and kind of out of the way. Another benefit to these midship below deck restrooms is that it also allows a few extra seats to be added in the cabin. Now, as for my personal experiences, well, my favorite coach restrooms are those found on board the MCI D models. There's so much more space in the restrooms of a D model than any other model motor coach. It's also covered with stainless steel, making it more sanitary and easier to clean. And my all-time favorite perk of the restrooms on a D model is that the outward-facing wall of the restroom is actually a frosted-over window, allowing natural light. As a driver, sometimes the places you take your passengers are places where their events are right next to the bus, like going to parks or picnics where they eat right outside of the coach. Well, on an MCI J model or a Prevo, where the restrooms are basically a completely covered plastic box, every time someone wants to come on board to use the restroom, you would have to turn on the power to your coach bus. Because with the power off on the J models and the Prevos, the restrooms are pitch dark without any electrical power to power the lights. On the MCI D models, you don't have to do this because there are beautiful rays of frosted sunlight beaming in for you to enjoy while you take a load off your mind. Now, Van Hool restrooms have natural lighting as well in their restrooms. However, that perk doesn't make up for all the deficiencies. Now keep in mind this is my personal opinion, but I absolutely despise Van Hool restrooms, specifically those on the C and the CX models. First of all, they're incredibly small because of the way they designed their restrooms to be a circular shape. The round door to the restroom on board make it awkward to open as it swings out really far. But the worst thing of all on a Van Hool's restroom is the way they designed the toilet bowl. The bowl is an extremely shallow stainless steel bowl with a flap on the bottom that covers the toilet, which will depress from the weight, in theory, to allow whatever is deposited to go through. Well, in theory is the key word here. From personal experience as well as feedback from passengers, when attempting to go number 2 on a Van Hool, the spring action on the toilet flap is strong enough where it tends to push back sometimes. And with the toilet bowl so shallow, well, let's just say what doesn't make it through that flap covering the hole ends up making contact with the user's bottom. A most unpleasant experience, I assure you. Also, for the gentlemen using this restroom, it is highly recommended by me personally and by the manufacturer as well to be seated when doing number 1 on the Van Hool. Aside from the obvious reason that aiming can be difficult while the coach is in motion, the shallow bowl of a Van Hool's toilet creates a wonderful splashback when attempting to go standing up. This advice, however, is not always heeded well by some passengers, and the result is a very wet restroom floor as well as the areas around the throne. Which, by the way, is conveniently designed in a way where the depressed areas around the toilet collects excess fluid ever so perfectly so that the next user will be sitting on a throne surrounded by a moat, if you get my drift. This also leaves the wash crew with a fun task after the coach returns from its trip for its cleaning. Now, why on earth would anyone design a moving restroom on a coach bus in such a manner? I have no idea.
Why in God's name would you want that bucket of bones?
But Van Hool, if you're watching this, please stop making your restrooms like this. I would figure that in the last 20 years you would have upgraded and changed the design, but you haven't. Again, my personal opinion only, so please don't sue. Also, again, it's important to note that I'm only referring to the Van Hool CX models restrooms, as I have never seen what the lavatories of any other Van Hool models, so I don't really know what they look like. Maybe they're better and only the C and CX models were given this horrible design.
I don't know. Do you?
Well, that's the question you have to answer.
Sorry guys, I've been wanting to rant about this for a long time now, and this video gave me the perfect opportunity to do so. I hope today's topic didn't cause anyone to lose their appetite. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. And if you like the channel, then consider supporting it by visiting my Patreon page and becoming a patron. Or you can buy yourself some fashionable Motorcoach World merch. Also, don't forget to check out Motorcoach World's Facebook page. Links will all be down in the description box below. As always, folks, thanks for watching, and if you're watching this, then you are part of the Motorcoach World.